So, Alice, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to become an artist.
Well, this is a story that goes way back, very, very, very early. And I enjoy telling this to my students because a lot of times they'll ask me, when I started as an artist and when I started drawing and so on and so forth. But it was when I was probably about 3 years old. I was still sleeping in a crib, but I was big enough to get out of it. And my mother had put me down to take a nap. This was in Alexandria, Virginia, when my dad was at the Pentagon. And I climbed out of my crib and found my box of wax crayons, and I started my first mural. So I took those crayons, and I can actually, as I'm telling this, I can see my room, where my crib was, where I was, where the wall was, where the door was.
That's amazing.
And I just started drawing all over my walls, and it was just, it must have been an amazing experience because my mother came in, and of course she was rather shocked because this was a rented apartment with wax crayon marks all over the bedroom wall. And I just remember her telling me that I would have to spend the day in my room trying to get that off the wall. And so my first memory was of drawing, but it was also my first punishment. But I don't remember anything negative about it at all. All I remember was how much fun it was to make marks. And so to this day, I still love mark making and drawing. And I think that was really the first beginning and the foundation for my, love of art and making art.
Very good. So, how did that evolve as you got, into your adolescence and your teen?
Yeah. Well, I think the older you get, the more early memories that you have, and you realize that so many things evolve in your life when you're really pretty young. I would say maybe even before 6 or 7 years old. And so there were a couple of other memories, I think, that are extremely important to the foundation, of the direction of my art. And the next big memory was going to visit my grandparents in Florence, South Carolina, and they were both avid gardeners. And they actually had a farm where we would go and get vegetables, and in the backyard there were tomato plants growing in another vegetable garden that was closer to the kitchen. And my grandmother had this gorgeous, gorgeous yard, and I particularly remember the blue hydrangeas and some really beautiful little pink flowers that were always in sort of an edge along the shrubberies. Anyway, we were going to be there for a couple of weeks, and so she gave me a handful of corn and a handful of beans, and told me to plant those anywhere in her manicured garden that I wanted. And so this very wise woman must have realized how quickly the beans and corn would come up, and it would be my first exposure, to what growth was all about, and the potential, in those little seeds and corn kernels, and to watch those things sprouting up was just an indelible memory that seems to be part of the basis of all the work that I'm involved with. A close affiliation and love for nature and the changing seasons and all that stuff. That was the foundation. And then there was one other memory that was about the same time, maybe a little bit later. We were living in Montgomery, and I had this really cute little wire-haired terrier, and her name was Susie. And Susie and I used to go walking together in the woods. This was back when you could let your kids go. You didn't need to worry about anybody harming them. It was on an Air Force base, and we had all these woods behind my house. And so off Susie and I would go, and we would collect stones. I remember I found fool's gold that I had for years and years and years. And I would collect seeds and pods and acorns and feathers and snails and all those sorts of things. And so those were my treasures that I would bring home. And one of my biggest installation pieces is now called A Walk Remembered, and things that I pick up on walks. And sometimes the things that I show in this piece are my clay interpretation of things that people have given me on their walks. And so those are probably the three foundation memories that I remember the most, that had a huge influence on my direction in art. I always knew I was going to be an artist, I just didn't know what kind.
Wow, that's amazing.